here. People in Washington lied. I mean, are we any of us surprised here? But look, I actually tend to agree with Isaac. I don't think this makes that much of a difference. The facts are going to come out, and the truth's going to come out. Mueller's going to have some indictments on Monday, and we'll find out what happens. From my perspective, I actually think this is really terrible legislative and political policy or strategy for the Republican side. We're trying to pass something that is extremely complicated, which is called tax reform. And every time we relitigate the 2016 election, we put ourselves back in that boat and we take our eye off the ball, because this is going to be immensely difficult. Every lobbyist on K Street is going to come and flood the halls of Capitol Hill, and I don't think the Republican side is even ready for this. So let's start to paint a picture of why tax reform is important, and let's focus on that rather than relitigating the 2016 elections. That's my view.
Jay, you bring up something really interesting there. You know, one side's Russian collusion is the other one's opposition research, and vice versa. So here we are, all this nasty, dirty research was done. Investigations are underway. We could possibly see someone getting arrested by Monday. I mean, when taxpayers look at all this nastiness in politics, I mean, is it just disheartening to them? Isaac?
Can I actually correct the premise of that just real quick? There was the premise that one person's opposition research is another person's collusion. Opposition research was paid for from a U.S. company, U.S.-owned company, U.S. citizens for opposition research. That's not the same as a candidate's campaign manager and a son-in-law going to meet and solicit help from a foreign government. That is an illegal in-kind contribution under U.S. law that says foreign governments cannot influence our elections. There's not a question there. It's actually pretty clear in the law of what is legal and not legal. And opposition research purchased from a U.S. company is pretty standard practice by both Republicans and Democrats. There's only one example here of a side actually trying to collude, and we know of at least two instances it was attempted with a foreign government.
You know, he raises an interesting point there, clearly, in that essentially Steele got involved after the Democrats got involved, when the DNC was involved, when the Clinton campaign was involved, and then there was the contact potentially with the Kremlin or with the Russians. And as we look at all this, I mean, that's where we ask, does it matter? That ultimately, if there are charges, if there was a crime that was committed, then, you know, all this disheartening stuff that goes on in politics, when it ultimately leads to something, does it then matter?
Look, there are not a lot of honorable men in Washington. I think Bob Mueller happens to be an honorable man, and he'll get to the bottom of it, and we'll find out what really happens. I actually happen to think this debate is playing right in the Democrats' hands, and that's what we've got to wake up and see. If we want to pass tax reform, lower people's tax burdens, and tell people why this is going to better their lives, we should focus on that. This intrigue, palace intrigue, and this parlor game is what plays in their hands. I would rather be debating, Isaac, on the merits of tax reform and and closing loopholes and those types of things, and that will be better for the Republican side, in my opinion, because we're right on the issue there. No, and let's try to focus on that.
And
that's actually something Jay and I
were saying that things were leading. If ultimately, if the DNC, if the Clinton campaign pays for this foreign entity to get involved, and then the Kremlin gets involved, and that information is passed on to the FBI, and it ultimately leads to investigation, and there is no crime.
Yeah. That didn't happen, though. Nobody has said that. Fusion GPS is located in Washington, D.C. It's an American-owned company. Nobody has said that. There's no accusation of that. That's not even kind of floating out there in the dialogue. I do want to respond to something Jay just said about moving on to the tax debate. I actually would disagree with him on the politics of that. The Republican tax plan that's been put forth, that has been analyzed so far of what they've alluded to, would raise taxes on 1 in 4 middle-class taxpayers over the course of 10 years. In the first year, it would raise middle-class, that's 50 to 90,000 in income taxpayers. 1 in 7 in the first year raised their taxes to fund tax cuts for the wealthiest 1%. I think Republicans probably would prefer to talk about another issue rather than their tax plan, giving the facts that we know of it so far.
You know, it's interesting there, shifting conversation there, and Jay, you were trying to do it as well. You know, people are essentially around the country seem to be willing to look towards the next thing, to move forward past the 2016 election. And perhaps, you know, will this Mueller investigation, as it begins, either perhaps we are in the middle of it or at the beginning of arrests, as things move forward, will we ultimately be able to do that? Will we ultimately be able to move on, Jay?
Well, I don't think that's going to happen because, first of all, I don't think the Democrats want that, and I don't think the Trump administration wants that either for some reason. As a person that really believes in conservative policy moving forward, that's something that I want to do. I want to start talking about these kinds of things. Look, this strategy didn't work when we tried to reform health care, and it's not going to work when we're trying to reform the tax code, which is so vital and so screwed up in this country. We all know it. Let's go do it. So I'm pessimistic, but I'm going to keep fighting for that. So let's try to do it.
All right, Isaac Wright, Jai Chabria, thank you both for joining me here
Thank
today.
you.
It's interesting. Washington certainly does get bogged down
Thanks, Molly.
in some things sometimes,
Thank
and we
you.
will see if we can move forward from here. Thanks, guys.
Well, the political turmoil in Spain escalating after lawmakers in Catalonia declared independence yesterday. Their victory turning out to be short-lived as the Spanish government quickly moved to seize control of that region. Kitty Logan is live in London with the latest on this story. Kitty?
Yes, this crisis continues. Essentially, the Spanish